Georgia, Mr. Carter for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Mr. Lennox, in May of 2016, you submitted a report on the Secretary of State's email records management, and you referred to 2 separate incidents in 2011 in which then-Secretary Clinton's private email server was targeted in hacking attempts. In January of 2011, there were 2 instances where a non-State Department employee notified Clinton's Deputy Chief of Staff that he had to shut down her server because he believed someone was trying to hack in. The next day, then Secretary Clinton's Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, Houman Abedin, told senior staff not to email sensitive information over Clinton's server. Is that true?
That's what we reported, and that's contained in the documents we reviewed.
Okay. On May 13th, 2011, after 2 of Secretary Clinton's immediate staff discussed Clinton's concern that someone was hacking into her email after she received a suspicious link, Secretary Clinton received another email with a suspicious link from an undersecretary. She replied to the email directly, asking if the undersecretary had really sent that email since she was worried about opening it. Is this best practices? Is this the way you're supposed to? I'm no expert on the internet or anything, but my kids always told me, no, don't open it.
Well, I can't speak to what's best practices in that community. I mean, I think
But is that the way you should respond to a suspicious email, especially after you've already had staff warning you that someone may be hacking into it and that you're concerned that it's being hacked into?
Well, what we reported is that under State Department rules, you're supposed to report when you believe you've been hacked, and that was where they fell short. They didn't report those two.
So they did not report it. Even though Ms. Clinton believed that she was being attempted to be hacked into, she did not follow State Department rules and report it.
That's correct.
This is Hillary Clinton we're talking about, Secretary of State.
That's correct.
That's the one. Okay, just want to make sure. By responding to that email, do you think that Secretary Clinton may have allowed a hacker to gain access to her emails?
I really would have no knowledge and ability to answer that question, whether she may have allowed an attacker.
But
obviously, it's a risk, and that's why it's required to be reported.
I was about to say, that's why we have the policy in place. Sure, it's a risk. And I guess that's where we get the extremely careless or whatever it was. Anyway, Mr. Lesnick, at any time during your investigation, did you see evidence, and this is important, please hang with me here, okay? At any time during your investigation, did you see evidence of Clinton staff knowing that her server, the server, was unsecure, yet they still sent sensitive information over it?
I'm not able to say that. We know from the records, we were not able to interview a number of folks, but we know from email records that there was discussions about the server. Whether they knew it was secure or unsecure, I don't have any evidence about that. No evidence about it.
Mr. Lennon, if Hillary Clinton's private email server was as secure as she has time and again assured us that it was, saying it was safe and secure, then why would her staff be so concerned? I mean, you stated in your report her staff showed a concern that don't use the, don't open this email, don't use this because we think you're being hacked into. Yet we've been told by her that it was perfectly safe and secure. Isn't that true?
We weren't able to interview her staff, so I'm not able to comment on what they were thinking at the time.
You know, I think, Mr. Lesnick, that it's pretty clear that the Secretary actively jeopardized the network and national security as well. I think any rational person would understand that this is what happened. I hope that you'll continue to investigate this, and I hope that you will report back to Congress any information that you might get. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Thank the gentleman. We'll now recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Grothman, for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up a little bit more on these emails. Okay, I mean, you guys were investigating the Benghazi thing. a subpoena was issued for the Benghazi documents. Could that have included documents that were emails that she sent or received on her private server?
We didn't investigate Benghazi.
We
We did. I'm sorry. We do.
yeah, we weren't involved in the Benghazi
Right.
either.
But do you believe on her private email there could have been documents related to Benghazi?
I would be speculating. I don't have an answer for that.
Is it possible? It's her private
Again, that
email.
wasn't part.
Okay. Let me put it this way.
I don't know.
With regard to freedom of information, you have determined that there's no question that she had work emails on her private server, right?
Yes, that's true.
That's incontrovertible. Okay? If she had work emails on there, whatever they were about, might have been about Benghazi, might have been about the Clinton Foundation and, whatever's going on there that maybe wasn't right. How long was she supposed to hold on to the emails, the work emails, after she left her office?
Well, as we stated in our report, the rules require that she surrender official records upon her departure. Same rules applied to Powell as well. And so at that time, when she left the department, those emails should have gone back into the agency record keeping.
Okay, she didn't surrender them. But if she would have surrendered them, how long would they held on to those emails? Work-related emails related to the Secretary of State. Let's say she did the right thing. She leaves office on whenever it was, January of 2013. How long would those emails be held by the government?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question. That's unclear. I mean, one of the things in our report was, we stated, is that they didn't do such a great job preserving emails at that time. And so their systems that were in place
weren't the right
so
thing.
I don't have an answer to that question because it's not clear to me how long they would have been preserved.
I'll ask you both, because I think the answer should be obvious. Maybe the departments weren't doing the right things, but if you get a Freedom of Information request, say, for something that happened 2 years ago, these agencies are supposed to have it, right? Are you guys subject to Freedom of Information?
Oh, sure. They're supposed to maintain the
Right.
records.
So if I ask you guys a Freedom of Information request on something you guys were doing 2.5 years ago, you'd be able to pull that up for me, couldn't you?
Well, again, so long as the record is in the
You should
agency's
be able
possession.
to, right? Assuming somebody didn't screw up.
Some records are disposed of. I mean, they're time frames. But
Minutia. But most things, you would be able to find things that you worked on 2.5 years ago, right?
You would hope.
Otherwise, why even have a Freedom of Information Act? Okay. I guess what I'm getting to, not only did she not turn them over, as you're saying she should have, correct? But if she wasn't going to turn them over, wouldn't it have been more prudent to hold on to them?
I'm not sure I follow you.
Okay, if I want to know something that was going on in the Secretary of State's office in 2012, and I made a Freedom of Information request, the first thing they would do is they'd look at the records that they are holding on to, right? And if Mrs. Clinton did not turn over the records as she was supposed to under law, we might contact her and say, hey, Mrs. Clinton, we have a Freedom of Information request here. Do you have any records dealing with the year 2012? Right? Isn't that what you think would happen?
I don't know. I mean, possibly.
Kind of frustrating here. Do you think it was right for her to dispose of these records, just as when she was still Secretary of State, would it have been right for her to erase work-related emails?
Well, if they count as federal records, she's supposed to make them part of an agency record-keeping system.
Right.
That's clear.
Right.
So if she didn't turn over records that are part of the agency record-keeping system, then she would be violating State Department rules requiring her to do so.
And if she would have, they would still be available, unlike being erased by her lawyers, right? Assuming somebody didn't screw up in the State Department.
Well, I don't know if they would have been maintained because we found systemic issues with records preservation. So I can't tell you for
They
sure.
should have been maintained.
Absolutely.
I'll put it there. Absolutely.
Sure.
So absolutely, if somebody makes an open records request, be it about the Clinton Foundation, be it about Benghazi, whatever, in the year 2014, the State Department should have been able to say, here are the emails related to that, right?
Sure.
Absolutely. And they didn't and couldn't because they were erased by Secretary
I don't know if they were
Clinton's-
erased, but the bottom line is there were, 50,000
Well, we heard
pages of emails
we heard
that
when they
were
testified,
not returned to the department.
we heard when the FBI testified that tens of thousands of emails were erased. So I think we can assume, and some of those they were able to retrieve. We know they were work-related. So I guess that's the point. Was something wrong done there to erase work-related emails? So as the result, the Freedom of Information request cannot be fulfilled. Is there something wrong with that? Very wrong with that.
Well, again, if they're agency records, they should be part of the agency record-keeping system.
In other words, work-related emails.
Well, they'd have to fall within the definition of an agency record, which is anything that documents the deliberations, the agency transactions, those kinds of things, not personal matters or not logistical matters.
Work-related.
Work-related.
So when
correct.
when the FBI testifies, as they did like an hour ago, that they found work-related emails that had been erased, there was something clearly wrong there, because those emails should have been available in case somebody was making a Freedom of Information request.
They should have been surrendered to the department when she left.
Surrendered, and they should have been available.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank the gentleman.